Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. Monday.
The country still needs a little healing.
Yes.
I was mentioning to Daniel just a few minutes ago, quite frequently when I go out on my walk, people stop me. But the exasperation they're expressing now, these are just average people out jogging and walking, and they're just, like pulling their hair out. What's going on? When's anybody going to do about it? So there is a lot of frustration and a lot of anger too. And I consider these my neighbors, and generally I don't expect much emotion from them, but it seems like they're getting more upset, and I would say it's justified because it annoys me too. And yet it motivates me to hopefully help steer people in the right direction, because there are answers to these problems. But this week and these last couple of days had brought attention to, really it's attention to racism. If you want to make it very generalized, and the topic today is Maxine Waters, and her incitement. And she was the first one to say that, and many on the opposition were just absolutely hysterical about demagoguing this whole issue of Trump, even with all his problems and all. I mean, he didn't cause an insurrection. A true insurrection didn't occur with people without weapons. There was no coup, there was no attempt. There were just problems. And now there was even a report out recently that shows that the police did actually stand down. And allow this to happen. And they did have information with the warning. This is what happens when the system breaks down. That even if you have a president wanting to do things, then you have a corrupt judicial system and you can't trust the FBI. I mean, just think of over those last 5 years. That whole thing on Russiagate was that the whole system was falling apart. But now there are people saying, people finally have reacted more than just the die-hard libertarians and good conservative constitutionalists. People are saying, get rid of this woman. They impeached Trump twice, unsuccessfully removing him from office. But somebody suggests impeach Maxine Waters. I think the impeachment in the House of Representatives comes up at the next election. But it's a good topic, and they should remove her. But it's not likely to happen. The system is so well set up to benefit individuals like this that they can, everything they do wrong, they usually charge the opposition with it. So this has been happening the last 5 years. All the charges against Trump were things they were doing themselves. And it's pretty hard for people to understand that, especially when the machinery of the bureaucracy and the propaganda machine and the media and social networks, I mean, all these things, they really have an upper hand. But I think we're at this point where the opposition has overextended themselves in the lockdown, and the innuendos and the scare tactics and the justification for expanding the role of government and spending like crazy. I think there's a lot of people who know that this can't continue. But it's also sometimes an incentive for people to get what they can get while the getting's good. The people who, whenever they can find a chance to riot, they break the windows and grab what they can get while the getting's good. They know this can't be a way of life, but they go in and they rob and they steal and disrupt, and then they wait for the next riot to occur. So this is something that I think is going to be with us, and Maxine Waters is receiving probably deservedly some criticism for overdoing it while blaming others with her hysteria.
Well, the situation, as we know, is a powder keg. There's been violence over the weekend. Violence is ready to break out with the trial closing statements in the Derek Chauvin case today. It's a powder keg. Riots, violence, burning, and looting. And here walks into this extremely delicate situation Maxine Waters. She travels from California out to Minnesota. She breaks the curfew. She's out past the curfew. She says, basically, she yells fire in a crowded theater. She says, get more confrontational. They're already burning things up and beating up people. Get more confrontation. Now, can you imagine? She accused Trump of leading an insurrection against the country. Can you imagine what would have happened if Trump had actually done what they claimed? If he had traveled over to the Capitol, if he stood up on the building and had a microphone and said, let's get even more confrontational. Come on, you're not doing enough. It would have been something. So again, it's projection. She's doing what she accuses Trump of doing. And here this just goes to show her, that's why they call her Mad Maxine. Here's a short clip. There are a lot of clips, but here's the shortest one I could find to show just how deranged this woman is. If we can get that queued up, and it's about 18 seconds. Yeah, let's hear this.
And how do you bring the other side to the table? What do you say to Republicans and conservatives?
Let it through, y'all.
You know, the Republicans and the conservatives have shown us that they're willing to invade the capital of the United States and kill all of us. So I'm not depending on them for anything.
She said Republicans and conservatives have shown us they're willing to invade the capital of the United States and kill all of us, meaning Congress members. Well, on January 6th, there were no guns among the so-called insurrectionists. It was a weird insurrection. The only people that died, one of them was an unarmed protester shot by the Capitol Hill police, and the others died of, quote, natural causes, heart attack and stroke while they were there. There was no killing, there was no harming, there was no intent to kill them, but she still perpetuates this lie that they came to kill all of us when she's doing something right now in the streets that may well lead to the deaths of many people.
You know, she's in the news now, and she's being caught, and more people know what she's up to. But first time she did get some attention was in 2018.
Yeah.
You know, when she went and he gave instruction to her group, you know, where she was trying to incite them to do more. And it was whenever you see anybody that looks like a Republican or some Republican official, if they're out having dinner, doing anything, she's really telling them to violate their rights because, you know, it wasn't, well, she didn't punch anybody in the face, but there's a violation where you interfere with people's activity and they're in their face and interference. She was, you know, obviously interfering with the rights of these other people, but that was 2 years ago. But, you know, a lot of this stuff we get upset when you see them going over to where they're actually using violence and pushing and all. But, you know, philosophically, I don't think that's a giant leap. Because our government, Republican, Democrat, conservative, and liberals, use the principle of government force to do everything they want.
Yeah.
They redistribute wealth, they fight undeclared wars, they do everything, and they're the ones who really abuse the use of guns.
Yeah.
And so they do this. So for them to do this on a personal level, they're doing it's a double whammy. You know, Bastiat said, you know, it's easy to figure out if you can't do it, the government can't do it. Well, the government doesn't anyway, but now we have these hoodlums out here going about, and they're doing it both on a personal level and as well as a legalistic method, how you can punish and disturb your enemies and punish your enemies for so-called legal reasons.
You know, the 2018 thing was important because she told her, and just think about this, if a Republican leader had instructed, for example, the Proud Boys, you know, these groups like this, if they had instructed the Proud Boys to do this, let's make sure we show up whenever we have to show up. If you see anybody from that cabinet, say it's the Biden cabinet, if you see anyone from the Biden cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and create a crowd and you push back on them and you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere, she said. Can you imagine if the shoe had been on the other foot and some radical group like this had been encouraged? It would have been in the headlines of the news. CNN, the ratings might have even had a little blip because it's gone down into the sewer since they lost their bête noire Trump. But it's just outrageous. She has a history of these outrageous statements. And then she basically said, if the verdict comes back anything less than murder, you get out there and you get confrontational, you hold riots, you overturn a legal system, which we know is biased. The legal system is a bad legal system. But what she's looking for is revolutionary justice.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the findings are in the case. Justice comes from the street.
No, that is very, very blunt. And, you know, there's been stories out that it's a threat is what they're doing. You know, if you don't rule correctly from our viewpoint, which is Black Lives Matter, and then we're going to riot on you.
Yeah.
And that you know, that doesn't miss, the jury doesn't miss that. They claim that they're sequestered and all that. They know exactly what's going on. But let's hope that the jury system works, because we don't have much any better thing to offer, and maybe there'll be some surprises. But it won't be a surprise if this person isn't executed for his crime. They're still going to riot, the people that disagree with that finding. So, but we have Maxine Waters, and we have this trial going on, but I think it brings up a bigger subject of Black Lives Matter, because that's been several years now where they've really has gained steam in influencing what's going on. They're supported by the media. They're supported by big business, corporatism. The corporatists are, how they're going along with any time that somebody has to be canceled or punished. They go along with it, and it's also this thing. I like the word wokeism. If you don't do it, you're going to be canceled, and you're going to be labeled that you're not woke, and you are not obeying what we teach. And what they teach is the overthrow, really, and they're very blunt about this. On family, one of their goals is to disrupt the family. This is a quote coming from somebody who's suffering as a leader, as Black Lives Matter, gets millions and millions of dollars. But that's part of the philosophy leaders can do. They can steal because they determine what is right and wrong. But the leader is, she purposely says, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other. The nuclear family is their enemy, and religion is their enemy. And that, of course, is why unfortunately, maybe not half, but a lot of churches rolled over and didn't stand up against it, the lockdown.
Well, it was a controversy that broke out over the weekend because the co-founder of Black Lives Matter was caught purchasing her fourth home in a overwhelmingly white neighborhood in near Los Angeles, California, $1.4 million home. Dr. Paul, we have a little 501c3 here, and it's amazing. I didn't see my fourth home being, usually the IRS looks over these C3s because you can't have a salary that's too high, that's disproportionate to what you do in these things. But I don't know how she's able to swing it. But when called on it, she gave a tearful interview, and let's put this first clip on. She turned on the tears now when she's getting in trouble. She breaks down in an interview over right-wing attacks on her new home. Patrice Couleur breaks down. She's upset because they caught her. She's an avowed Marxist, and she has 4 homes. But I didn't really see the disconnect, because I've studied a lot about communism, Dr. Paul, and I've studied the revolutions. And the Marxists always lived in the best neighborhoods in places like Hungary and Eastern Europe. They always had the best houses. They believed they deserved it. And that was, of course, and we talk a lot about hypocrisy, that's a big part of what brought down communism in Central and Eastern Europe, because people became disgusted and cynical that their leaders who were preaching one thing were living in a very, very different way. And so I wasn't surprised to see Patrice with her 4th home in the Hollywood Hills. It doesn't surprise me at all.
They want to break up the Western civilized concept of the family, and they admit that. But she is quoted as saying, "I just felt so defenseless and so helpless. And, as a mom, all we want to do is take care of our kids and protect them by destroying somebody else. That they're anybody else's nuclear family, or if it's a Christian nuclear family, we have to destroy that concept. And only they, with power, will determine what is right or wrong. But I don't know. I keep my fingers crossed, and I keep plugging away, because I think more and more people are waking up. I don't understand, I understand a little bit about politics. And I understand that the best thing about politics that people want to really understand or deal with it, just avoid it. But I didn't avoid it. I got involved. But it just seems like this destruction. I thought this last election, would have guaranteed a total victory, which may have happened, but it was just denied, about the way the streets were burning down. You know, the riots in the streets, and right now, you know, they have riots in the streets, so they say, well, maybe we need a more efficient police department to take care of all this violence. No, they get rid of the police, and you know, they defund them, and that does not go over well with most Americans. You know, the police, and we've done part of this, is criticize the police because we believe they really overreacted. You know, in the drug war.
Yeah.
You know, the violations of civil liberties, and actually some of that looked racial because of the percentage of people who were getting busted, you know, by the police. But what they're talking about now is not that type of mistakes the police have made. This is just the authority, and just think of what it's like in California. They in San Francisco especially, you can't expect anybody to come and rescue you. So, you know, what would a free society do? You know, a truly libertarian society probably wouldn't cry all that much.
Yeah.
If it were libertarians, they'd all say, well, I guess we're defending ourselves.
Yeah.
But what do? They take the guns away from us, and then the people can't even defend themselves. So they compound the errors. But you know, right now there's this horrendous attack on the principle of gun ownership, and not talking about the violation of people using guns. It's just the principle of owning a gun for self-defense. Just think of how many people who suffer in the inner city, you know, aren't allowed to own a gun for self-defense.
Yep.
So what do? They take them away from them, they give them to the police, then they take them away from the police, then they hire their personal guards, and the very wealthy, these people who run these programs, they have gated communities, and they have plenty of police, private police protecting them, and they don't even believe in private police, and you accept it when it's there to protect them.
Well, you know, Patrice is a grifter, I think, in any case, and I think what she does really actually hurts Black lives. But, you know, all the attention on Black Lives Matter and this is, you know, really creates a false perception that all African Americans in this country are in this category. You know, they're all on the street, they're all Marxists, they're all doing that. And you were doing a little bit of research thinking about some of our great friends and allies, and you had mentioned it before the show.
Yes, I thought, well, we have a bunch of hardcore libertarians, but I just wanted to, well, look around for a few more names. You know, people like Walter Williams and Tom Sowell. These are well-known, real decent people, and I've met them both and worked with them, especially Walter Williams. I've worked with him for a long time, and I thought, well, there'll probably be some other, and we see them on television on some of the conservative stations. They're real good. So I thought, well, I'm going to look at the list. So I got to look for black leaders with conservative libertarian views. Well, you know, there are pages after pages and on the Wikipedia. So they're out there, but they're considered by the establishment as bad people. You know, because they've sold out. But they're really good people, and they have to stand up to a lot. You know, and they say, well, you guys are a bunch of weaklings, and well, it takes some strength for a person like that that's going to be harassed by the woke community, and you better be careful. We're going to cancel you, and we're going to cause you to lose your job. That system going on now, orchestrated by Black Lives Matter, that is vicious, mean, and nasty to destroy a person's economic and social life by being able to gang up. And the sad part is how bad off the big corporations are to go along with this. And you can only understand that if you look at the history of World War II. Why did the big corporations go with Hitler? You know, they helped get him into power. So that is a real tragedy, and we're moving in this direction. And a few, you know, progressives that have stayed progressive and on the right track for, you know, corporations and war and all these things. They think that you know, this whole thing about the corporations going with them is one of the worst things, and I think it's harder to sort out, because if you say well, all corporations are bad. That's not true.
Yeah.
There's many corporations that are honest and moral and follow the law. Others are just an arm of the government. If you look at big tech, they are big drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not capitalism and freedom. That's nothing more than the arm of big government to squelch the independence of the people who want to take care of themselves. All they want to do is leave me alone. I'll take care of myself, which is what will happen if this calamity comes, where the destruction of all the finances. The calamity will come when it's recognized that the debt is unpayable and people panic. And we're seeing a little bit of that, hints of that occurring right now.
You know, there's a whole new generation of young black libertarians and conservatives, but libertarians for sure who are coming up. You're not going to see them on CNN. And in fact, Maj Touré, the founder of Black Guns Matter, you probably saw this clip because I watched it a few times. He was on Fox the past couple of days, and he gave a fantastic, I think about a 2-minute rationale reason why young African Americans, young minorities should look to libertarianism and conservatism, but mostly libertarianism for a real coherent ideology. So there are a lot of really good ones out there like him and many others, but you're not going to see him very many places, unfortunately.
You know, the gun issue is very interesting because the way I understand the history, right after the Civil War, people were worried blacks are going to be freed and slaves, and we can't allow them to have guns. So gun control was motivated by taking and keeping them from the slaves that were released.
Yeah.
So it was a bigoted effort, had nothing to do with the Second Amendment. And a little bit of that is going on right now too, because there's racism that goes on because it's the blacks in the inner city that really need the right to own a defensive weapon, and they're not allowed. But you know, there's another area that backfires on the whole system that progressives and the liberals love, because I think if there's the strongest social economic issue motivating, division between the two parties, I think is the life issue, the abortion issue. Because the abortion issue is something that how many progressives that we have in Congress, how many liberal Democrats we have that profess to be good Catholics and opposed on principle on abortion, but they all go along with it and promote it, and I could name a few there. but the thing about abortion, this is a true story, and it really shook me up because when I went into medicine, I was in medicine and I got frustrated with the monetary issue. In 1974, I put my name down as a candidate for Congress. And I remember I went to a Republican meeting and talked to the leaders of the Republican Party and told them, that I've signed up. And they knew I was right to life. And they sort of come over, and it was sort of like a whisper. We don't really push too hard on that because don't you realize that abortion is a tool where you can limit the number of black children being born. And I was just dumbfounded. But you know what? It's true now.
Numbers
percentage-wise, there's a lot more abortions of blacks than whites. But you'd think a lot the black leaders, why is Black Lives Matter, which is such a farce? Black lives matter if they do as we tell them. And but the black life of a 5 or 6 or 7 pound infant that has not yet been born, that life doesn't matter to them. It doesn't even matter even up to birth. And then they brag, Black Lives Matter. And when they finally do that, really, basically the enemy of tyranny is all lives, no lives matter except those who have power. And that's the enemy we have to contend with.
Tools of the elite, the narrative of the elite. Well, let's move on because here's a real quick one though. Just because I know you mentioned this in your column today, and I when I saw that I went and dug up the graphic. There's a new report out from a group we have a lot of respect for. Stephen Kinzer's involved with them. This is the Watson Institute, and it's over at Brown University. This is the Costs of War Project, and let's just put this just for 2 numbers. Let's just put that up. It's a web page. It's the last thing we sent over there, and I just want to focus on the pie chart first. When we get that up there, if we could find that, the cost of war. Here we go. And if we just maybe make it a little bit bigger for those at home with bad eyes. Well, maybe if we can't, don't worry about it. But here are a couple of things. Total cost of the war, 2001 to 2021, $2.261 trillion. Wasted in Afghanistan. And then just scroll down toward the bottom now if you can. And the other number to look for is keep going a little bit more, deaths, keep going, unfortunately. The Cost of War Project also estimates that 241,000 people have died as a direct result of this war, killed 250,000 people, and wasted over $2 trillion. And that is, if you want to know everything that's wrong with foreign policy, a lot of people got rich, a lot of contractors in the Beltway got rich from this 20-year war, but at what cost?
Right. You know, I'm going to sort of close my position here on the last specific item, and that is the question of, you know, the lockdown. There's still a lot of people out there that like lockdowns and promoting, but there's also some better information now than there was a year ago or even 6 months ago, and we have been talking about it all the time. There's no advantage to lockdown, no health benefits from this. And the question really comes up, and why do people still want to have lockdowns if the evidence is out there that more people are going to die with lockdown than without lockdown? So the states, I mean, they have the statistics there. The states that did not lock down, the people stayed healthier. And that doesn't mean they didn't get sick and there weren't problems, but there was two things. Not as many people died, and the economy remained much healthier. How can people, you know, get so militant and so righteous about wanting to take an individual who won't wear a mask and punish them, and to have them turned into the police and break down doors and go into churches and try to take people out of a church and different places because they won't wear a mask, and they've never proven the mask and the lockdown was of any benefit. So that's something that someday we have to get an answer for.
Yeah, hopefully we do. And I have a couple quick clips as I try to do just things I noticed over the weekend. Let's put up that next one. This is amazing. This is a mainstream publication, Wales Online, and the headline jumped out. Someone posted it, and I noticed it. This is from just a day or two ago. UK's top modeling body gives detailed projection of third coronavirus spike as restrictions are lifted. Okay, that's nothing new. There's going to be another third wave if you lift the restrictions. But look at this. And I highlight it. Let's go back, please. Most people hospitalized in the third wave are expected to have received 2 doses of a vaccine. I mean, we're not the anti-vaxxers. It's really the mainstream, the people that tell you to get vaccinated. You know, someone said that Fauci is the biggest anti-vaxxer in the country because every time he opens his mouth up, people say, I don't want to take that. But here's another saying. People that are fully vaccinated are going to make up the majority of people who go to the hospital. Dr. Paul, I plead with you, you're a doctor. Please explain this to me.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't have an explanation other than the fact that right now authoritarianism is still pretty popular, and it's infectious and it's epidemic. And when people sort of don't want to assume responsibility for themselves, and when there's an alternative like freebies, a free system, you can have this for free, you don't have to pay. Just think, nobody has to pay for a vaccine shot.
Yeah.
So what if the vaccine shot had cost $20? Oh, that would have been racist.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden it would be racist. But no, I'll bet when they add up that there's going to be a lot of vaccines sitting around, never touched. Then they're going to have defects in some, and now they're frustrated because some people are listening to Fauci and say, hey, maybe I shouldn't go along with this guy.
Yeah, he's not a very good salesman.
And there's going to be, right now it's not relevant. People, you know, when the vaccine was becoming available in the hysteria last summer, people were really scared. They were terrified. They wanted it, and they were lining up. But I think that's past. If they just knew they had to pay for it, it might have made people more cautious. And you say, well, that means poor people couldn't have had it. No, there probably would have been
programs.
There would have been programs for it. I don't. In the little bit of memory I had, you know, in the 50s when the vaccine came out for polio, I don't remember any of this stuff, and it was in the private market. We'd go to the doctor and pay him probably $3, or it wasn't very expensive, and people would get their polio shot. But it's nothing like that now. It's all a mess.
Here's a couple short ones. Here's in the "Oh, now you tell us" category. Let's look at the next one, and I picked this specifically for you, Dr. Paul. Let's look at the next clip if we can. New York Times: regular exercise may help prevent against severe COVID. You read this and you think the first thing they did was shut down the gyms and prevent people from exercising. It's almost like they wanted it that way. One final clip here, if we can put it up. And this, I always like to do these because these are very interesting. On that last clip, if we can get that. I think we should force experts to guess which one of these curves had the longest mask mandate or never had one. This is the curve of daily cases per million from Montana, North Dakota, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wyoming. All virtually the same regardless. So the ones that didn't force you to put on mask mandates didn't do anything different. My final word, Dr. Paul, I know I'm running long here, but I just want to tell our viewers, over the weekend I wrote a little piece about the 8th anniversary of the Ron Paul Institute, and I can't go without mentioning it to all of you. We passed 8 years on Saturday, Dr. Paul, the 17th of April. Remember, we were up at the Capitol Hill Club making our announcements, and thanks to all of you supporters that we've lasted this long. If you're not signed up for regular updates from Ron Paul Institute, go to ronpaulinstitute.org and subscribe. It's free, and we're not going to bother you or give your name away. I'll resend what I sent over the weekend to our new subscribers today. And also, if you want to keep supporting us, please, your donations are tax deductible to the full extent of the law. ronpaulinstitute.org is the parent of this show and helps keep this show alive. Thank you for 8 years, and let's hope for a lot more.
Yes, I remember that well when this was started, and it was exciting. But I also remember that we didn't stay long. Soon after that, we got out of Washington. I had finished my tour of duty, several tours of duty. So we, of course, came to Texas, and you moved here. And I think it's gone quite well when you consider, I would like to, when you were comparing all these money spent on the military, if you compare what we've been able to do, and we shouldn't be bashful about that, and compare it to some of these organizations. If you had an organization, if you've had experience in foreign policy, and I've had, what if we decided we wanted to set up a lobbying group for the military-industrial complex because we knew the insider? Well, first they wouldn't believe us, so that wouldn't have worked. But anyway, that's where you make the big money. But I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today, and the viewership is very loyal to what we're doing, and of course I believe the message is very important, and I think this whole issue of the lockdown, we have a ways to go on that. But I do think, and I mentioned it in the program today, that one of the biggest issues we face today is the distortion of truth by Black Lives Matter, this whole pretense that they are righteous and that they really care about Black lives. They care about themselves, and the leaders care about very, very fancy $1 million houses, and that is immoral, it's wrong and deceitful, and of course the position of using this authoritarianism to get people to do certain things in a social way. If you don't do it, we'll destroy your life by canceling you. And if you don't become woke and do what we tell you, like the good businessman does, they come over. Why can't you guys come over too? Well, I tell you what, I think that whole thing needs dissecting, and we need to emphasize it, which we did today, that I am not convinced that the people who promote Black Lives Matter really can defend themselves, that in reality, do they really care about Black lives any more than other lives? They care about their personal financial lives that they can get advantage to by having this organization. So I know that may discourage some people, thinking that, well, there must be some good things in there. I'm sure there are plenty who have been taken in and think that the motivation is above reproach. So no, I don't think so. But I think that the answer to all these things comes from the principles of liberty. People ought to be given the responsibility of taking care of themselves. We ought to separate medical care from the government. We ought to separate church from the government. We ought to separate the whole episode. The government needs to be made much, much smaller. We should emphasize the responsibility of the individual, and liberty does not come to us as a member of a group. That is not how you have your freedom. Your freedom comes to you as an individual, comes to us in a natural way and in a God-given way, and that is how it should come. But if you don't have it that way, once they take it away, they divvy it up and they pass it out again, and that's what's happening now. Just think of trying to return liberty after taking it away from people for more than a year. Well, we'll let this businessman do this. We'll let him do this. It'll be parceled out to individuals, and that is not what liberty is all about. And we hope to stay in the business of promoting the cause of liberty, because we are very interested in peace and prosperity. Thank you very much for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.